Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Iberia Parish Library. My name is Erica Romero. I am the Community Relations Coordinator here at the library. And we thank you all for coming out this afternoon to listen to this year's Poet Laureate. So just to keep things short and sweet, because you're not here to hear me, you're here to hear her. So this is Alison Pelegrin.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm happy to be here, happy to be part of Books Along the Teche. And I wouldn't feel right if I didn't point out that I'm not the only poet laureate in the room, because we have John Warner Smith here, who's a former poet laureate of the state as well. So thank you for being here and for your support. And I know that you have an event tomorrow with Daryl Bork in the morning at 9 o'clock. Is it in the library? At Shadows along the Shadows Business Center. Okay. So don't miss out that if you're someone who's writing poetry and wanting to learn what you might do to publish your poems. I thought I'd start by reading some poems, and then um, there's usually questions that people have, so I'll stop and leave time for that, or whatever might come up when we're going. Since we have an eclipse coming up on Monday, are y'all ready for the eclipse? Where I live, the libraries are giving out eclipse glasses. So I don't know if you don't have yours yet, maybe you can get some from this library. So that's great. And if you don't have glasses, I hope you know to look at the ground at the shadows that make the shape of the moon. This is called As I Stand on a Paddleboard for the First Time in June, I Plan for October's Eclipse. Knowing full well the folly of counting on tomorrow, I resolved to be on Bayou Castine for the eclipse coming in 100 days. I've got solar glasses and a flashlight to wear around my neck, and I'll pack a flask, because if you're not reading boat names and sipping bourbon on the bayou during the solar eclipse, why even bother? But now it is summer, and I live for darkness where it is cooler, roaming the yard in board shorts and Crocs. How do I, who barely have my balance, dare dream of gliding among cypress, stoic and black waters? Tonight's crickets salute the thunder moon. Those that will sing their confusion to the future have just taken root. You don't have to clap after every poem. You can just say it, because that'll get bored. And then if you don't clap for one, I'll lose my self-confidence and think you don't like that one, and I'll feel bad. I live in St. Tammany Parish, and I ride my bike sometimes to Abita Springs, which is really close to me, just a few miles. And there's a place there run by the artist John Preble. It's called the Useum Museum, and it's an old gas station, but he's turned it into a museum of found objects and art that he's continually adding to. One of the things he has in there is called the Hot Sauce Shrine, or the Hot Sauce House, and it's built out of bottles of hot sauce, which is interesting. He also has fake taxidermy, like a dog-a-gator. So there's an alligator with a dog's, oh wait, no, it's a dog with an alligator's head. He's got all kinds of silly things there. You can really get lost. So that's where I was when I got the idea for this poem, which is called Hot Sauce Shrine. I used to be a high priestess of tail feather feel-good mumbo-jumbo, naysayer extraordinaire cobbling together some crazy quilt catechism to cling to as I tangled in the world's thorns, frantic, fearing the chill soon to come. I haven't turned holy roller or handler of snakes, but things changed slowly or all at once. Maybe it was when I drove through a dust devil and inhaled its grit of cut grass and cigarette butts. I've taken to praying since the whirlwind shook me loose, or anyway, I dip my head at stoplights until I get distracted by scenery or birds, and the prayers come out confused. I'm clueless. My angel of place smokes blunts and speaks to me in bug bite braille. I know to visit St. Roch and turn his statue to the wall, but I hunger for alone time on an island with an organ that plays itself, or to whisper all my secrets to the hot sauce shrine. I read that the world is a dream of God, and now I don't know what to do with my hands. The world is God's dream, and I am a sparrow passing through song and the brass glow of fire. Or maybe that's wrong, and I'm trapped inside, stunned against the glass or down the chimney, terrified of kind hands that sweep me to the door. When I wake, I'm walking the moonlit labyrinth with wet feet, and the birds are quiet because I have terrified them with the thunder of my stumbling. O God of everything that creeps, I light a candle and ask my question. Is it pilgrimage enough if I spend my life remembering the few seconds I was a bird? I'm going to read this poem called Apology. Oops, sorry. It's hard with the I used to play the trumpet in marching band in high school, and I pretended that I didn't like it, but I really did because I loved marching in Mardi Gras parades. And I went to a Catholic high school, so it was all nuns that were the teachers and the band directors, and I thought they were so mean because they were mean. But one of the things that wasn't a big deal that I thought was a big deal is that they wouldn't let us hang beads on our trumpet or our instruments. I played the trumpet, and I just thought that was so mean. And I've been mad ever since. So this is called Apology. But I'm not really sorry. Why did I pretend to hate bunking at Rosaryville for band camp? My fixation on whitewashed Jesus in the Sisters' Cemetery was uncool. I pretended to choose that path so I could sneak cigarettes and conjure my pranks in peace. My grandfather taught me to rub a bar of soap over my double-socked toes. Thanks to that hack, I could march forever in my majorette boots. He also trained me in his Marine Corps hijinks. It was my pleasure to muffle a trumpet solo, to hop out of step on purpose and keep it up for miles, just to see the sisters scowl. I loved Mardi Gras, the parades, mammoth breasts painted with faces, the crowd adorning me and my horn with beads that looked like fun-loving rosaries. When I made up things to tell the priest they sent in to hear confession, more than the lies, my intent was to make him feel useful. I was clueless then, and only a few years removed from having tangible regrets, like that night in a honky-tonk when I struck a match on my zipper to keep a creep at bay. I knew my plan backfired when he leaned in and whispered, "Hot pants." These days, drink in hand, I boogie when the marching bands pass. I don't know exactly what I'm sorry for, but it's bothered me my whole life. I have to read this poem. It's called Our Lady of No Regrets because, like a misspelled tattoo. And I love tattoos. I even love bad tattoos. I think they're really funny. But now my son is starting to get tattoos. And so this whole poem hits a little differently for me when I read it out loud because I'm thinking of my little baby who was born, with his little fuzzy ears, and now he's getting all this stuff drawn all over him. No mom anywhere in it. But anyway. So this is called Our Lady of No Regrets. Oh. It references, well, anyway, I apologize if it's too racy. Our Lady of No Regrets. Prevention of bad tattoos must be your side hustle, lady, a part-time ministry. With respect, Queen of Inky Heaven, a few too many permanent atrocities have escaped your intervention. Just when it seems the world of ink has collected its wits, Another troll with armpit hair is born, or a Patrick Swayze centaur in a rainbow breeze. So many RIPs, so many mama's boys, so many portraits of you take liberties, from reverent to sexy but still chaste, to Dia de los Muertos Mary, rainbow Cupid with a fleshed out skull, gown lifted up revealing pistols on juicy, half spread thighs. Are you angry to have been made slutty, sweet lady? What's better, to be forgotten or to mingle on the flash art wall among vixens with spade-tipped tails? Mother to so many bad-inked guys and dolls, how do you stay calm? My mother wept over my tattoo, a fish in multicolor flames swimming up my back. Bad ink claims nothing lasts forever, except, of course, YOLO spelled in penises, a jigsaw puzzle face, and sorry mom stamped across the knuckles of two fists. But what about a mother's grief over children delivered with no guarantees? They are born, they whine, they steal change from your purse. They pierce their ears and brand themselves with ice. No blank space on their baby skin to mark with kisses. Only scribbles, other people's names inside of hearts. This is called Flood Subject. And the title I plagiarized from Emily Dickinson's letter, where she talks about writing all the time in her letters and about how when she gets an idea or she's thinking about immortality, she calls that the flood subject, which I think is so cool. This is Flood Subject. I'm partial to the lesser saints, doers like my mom, a mystic of tropical storms, making a game of disaster, making it safe for us to nap in hammocks under the carport, a marvel of calm, and when her crisis strength kicked in, able to lift the living room set up on cinder blocks. How many times have I waded in floodwaters sheened with oil, or put my faith in sandbags and the altar she erected in haste on the coffee table, flashlights, a radio, a deck of cards, hurricane candles housing gauzy saints, other than illumination, no real power. Since we're on the subject of plagiarism, because I plagiarized Emily Dickinson, although her work's in the public domain, so I'm clear. Here's another whose work is in the public domain. It's the Japanese poet Basho, who wrote haiku poems, which are simple little 3-line poems, but they're some of my favorites. One of my favorite poems ever is by Basho, and that's where I got the title for this poem. His poem is, even in Kyoto, hearing the cuckoo cry, I long for Kyoto. And I think that speaks perfectly about being out of place even where you belong. You know, you are where you want to be, but you're still not quite there. That's what he's speaking to. So my version of that, I grew up on the west bank of New Orleans, on the west bank of the Mississippi River in Gretna. So I had to change it up a little bit. And my version is, even in Gretna, hearing the cashier talk, I long for Gretna. Coasting into my old world to help Mom pack up the house she can't sell for nothing, rimmed as it is with trash and canals threatening to overflow, I get a taste for the red drink of my youth, and when the cashier at the gas station lets slip the drawl of my people, most of them scattered elsewhere or to the grave, I could sob. Peacock talk, purposely showy and slow. Anytime I'd hit the twang, Mom got angry because I was letting my Gretna show. She threatened a face slap or a taste of soap, and I circled on a red bike just out of reach. My family likes that poem because it has Gretna in it. And this year at Mardi Gras, we were at my cousin Julie's house uptown. And one of my aunts was drinking some red drink. The red drink of my youth is Pop Rouge. Does anybody remember that divine taste? Yeah, it's strawberry, but it's just called Pop Rouge. Like, it doesn't have a flavor. It's just Pop Rouge. Anyway, it's not there anymore. Ain't there no more. But they do make red barks, and my aunt was pouring that into a champagne glass and drinking it on Mardi Gras. And we called it her Gretna Rosé, which I thought was pretty funny. Gretna Rosé. This is called Bildungsroman, which is a fancy way of saying coming of age. It's my favorite genre of fiction, too. I like reading about anybody or any creature coming of age. So here's mine. Awake, asleep, I don't know what I was in childhood, feeling things deeply or not at all. It was a bad time for secrets. Kudzu laid hands but failed to cleanse me of the cruelties I exacted and received. When I asked to ride a horse on my birthday, I did not mean tracing circles on an invisible lead. I wanted my steed mean-spirited and wild, scattering clamshells up the levee to race cargo ships and the rust-bottomed barges shouldered above my head by the Mississippi. How can it be so easy to force water to change its shape? The mean girls next door called through the fence, begging for me to join them in the pool. As quick as I could scuff down the driveway, I was there, fumbling with the locked gate while they laughed. Likewise, I followed my brother to the skate ramp, well aware a broomstick was coming for the spokes of my bike. I remember braiding ribbons in my ever-damp ponytail for the occasion, and afterward recording the long, sad tale in my diary, which I hid in plain sight. I once had a dog. It was a rescued a retired greyhound. Have you ever seen those animals? I don't think they're really allowed to race them anymore because it's very cruel practice. But if they lose too many races in a row, they either they destroy the animal, or if the animal's lucky, they farm it out and a sucker like me adopts it, okay? So I adopted this one, and he came to us with this name, and you'll know I'm telling the truth because there's no way I could make this up. His name was Bohemian Shard, which is a really cool name for a dog. I never would have thought of it. And he had a tattoo in his ear, and there used to be a database you could punch the tattoo number into, and it would tell you his ancestry all the way back, further than I know my own ancestry, which is really funny, okay? So the closest to royalty we have in my family is my uncle, who is named Royal, so that's kind of a joke. And those are things that were going through my mind as I wrote this poem, which is called Royal Ancestry. I ate sweet rolls and chickens pecked the door while my people at the table carried on in French, playing cards and peeling crabs. We cursed in voodoo at football on TV, and when Chester got sick, we pushed him everywhere, even on trips to the Gulf Coast casinos. Aren't we all guilty of shooting for the fur coat life, with king crab for breakfast and comp nights in casino hotels? If you squint, you could say we were carnival rich, with a chest of doubloons in jewel colors. Uncle Royal called me queen, and I believed because he wore coattails spangled with sequins. I rode his shoulder, and the crew of Choctaw's feathered horses curtsied. Their riders tossed silk roses at our feet. Grandmother's chin hairs frizzed in the dark, and the wet house sank into itself, and across the Mississippi River, New Orleans glittered, a string of pearls just out of reach. I never belonged over there, but in Gretna I was royalty, at the pawn shop, at the camel club where my father ministered to shaky addicts and drunks, his wailing infants of sobriety. All of us royalty, former hard-drinking welders and kings, fat on shrimp for as long as we could keep the boat. St. Joseph's Day, and look at my son starring as Jesus Christ in the pageantry. Mary and Joseph traveling door to door, seeking shelter and rest. For the finale, an altar of food, and at the center, my royal boy, cradled in the braided loaves. That was before you had tattoos. Does anybody in here remember shopping at the best store in the world, which was also known as Wicks and Sticks? Anybody ever been there? It was, did you say a Gretna thing? That's hilarious. Maybe so. So it was a candle store, and I guess you could buy votive candles, but if you were at Wicks and Sticks, I don't know why you'd be buying votives, because you could buy candle scenes with dragons with a wick for a tongue and waterfalls coming down and all kinds of crazy stuff. In my house, we always had candles shaped like Buddha, but they also were Catholic, so I don't know whatever that religion is, that's what they were. So I long for that Wicks and Sticks, because now that I have a real job, I could afford something in the Wicks and Sticks, and it is alas gone. And the only person on earth that enjoyed going with me to that place was my father, who is also gone. And so this poem is called Sucker. I was a sucker for my daddy, an addict at heart, always hooked on something. Drambuie, the cabbage soup diet, Cajun dancing, hauling Yankees on the tour bus up and down River Road to ogle whitewash plantations. He once LARPed the vampire Lestat rising from a grave because he was a sucker for Anne Rice. He was a sucker for Wicks and Sticks, specifically candles shaped like Buddha, and apartment living after his divorces. He went hook, line, and sinker for self-help, especially Dianetics, and though his toenails blackened, he ran across the longest bridge in the world, twice. Then he took up ballroom dancing. He was the world's best drunk, and after he dried out, he was a sucker for AA. He was a sucker for fathering offshoremen bailed from the drunk tank, for naming these chain-smoking men my uncles, the women my aunts. Life became a potluck of talking through the night while the kids slept in cars. Except for me. I was a sucker for sitting under the fig tree behind the Camel Club, thinking no one could see me study him, golden-haired and calm, everyone's father but mine. A sucker for calm, for burnt coffee and all-nighters, for not looking away when sobriety's atoms named the worst horrors of their lives. When I was a kid, I was very gullible. I'm still very gullible. I just can't control it. But one of the ways that my uncles used to get me when I was a kid was by telling me that the back end of a mounted buck, so they got the antlers on the front end, and they used to tell me that the behind of the animal was in the closet in the other room. It just, because it wouldn't all fit in one room. And so Alison, the future poet laureate, would go in that closet and be spreading the coats and climbing up on shoe boxes looking for the rest of this animal, which of course wasn't there. And I always felt so embarrassed when I did that, but I still always kind of hoped that I was going to find something in that closet. So anyway, that's not in this poem, but it refers to it, I guess. And in this way the world passed me by. I am the one who flipped through all these books' dog-earing pages, so it's appropriate to refer to me as old soul, or at the very least ageless and wise, even though I obeyed the uncles who sent me hunting for the tail end of a mounted buck they said was on the other side of the wall. In yellowed snapshots, I stand out in the family lineup for my halter tops and the look on my face, which is that of one who hears the ocean churn without a seashell in sight. Places I have never been are where I think I was born, full grown, but with something to learn each time floodwaters wipe clean the slate. And because my life is one that is bookended by floods, I'll end with another flood poem. This is Our Lady of the Flood. And I wrote it on one of the occasions when I was in the uncomfortable position of being the bystander. I'm used to being in a flood when I'm the one getting flooded and getting all the stuff out of the way and just doing the best you can. But I'm not used to being in the position of seeing it happen to other people. And I know I always hate being gawked at. And I didn't, like, how do you make yourself informed but not gawk at people at the same time? I don't know the answer to that. This was in 2016 when the flood in Baton Rouge, Denham Spring happened, and those people experienced horrific flooding. Around that time, I saw a picture on the AP Wire by a photographer. I don't remember, but his name is in the notes. And he was, it could have been me in the photograph. It was a couple of people in cut-off shorts and water about up to their hips. Between them was a flat-bottom boat, and in the flat-bottom boat was a statue of the Virgin Mary. Like they were floating out their possessions that they wanted, and the thing that was chosen from their lives for a ride in that boat was the statue of Mary, that you've seen in 1,000 Gardens before. And so it was a really good image because it was a heartbreaking image, but I also felt that I knew those people. I knew exactly who those people were. And I just lost my page. Anyway, this is Flood Subject, and I'll find the page in a minute. Sorry, between the microphone and the fan is blowing. Okay, 21. Flood Subject. I already read that one. I'm trying to read you Our Lady of the Flood. I'm sorry. I know. I'm good, I got it. Here we go. Our Lady of the Flood. Lady, is that you with a citronella halo, ghosting the mud milk waters with a laundry basket of kittens in one arm? You are no mythic Saint Medard, sheltered from rain beneath an eagle's wing, but a hands-on angel of the earthly kind, sweaty, with a burden of buckets and bleach, sure-footed through labyrinths of debris. You take meals in church parking lots, thankful for whatever is served. Some saints are untouchable behind glass, but you ride in open boats with mildew on the edges of your gown, a calm commander of the Cajun Navy's fleet. Your devotees worship outside in a circle of ruined pews, no incense but bug spray. Their voices a cappella because the music of the drowned piano is too sad to sing to. They remain faithful because you are the one constant, honored in front gardens and kitchen shrines. You with your shrimp boots and rubber gloves. Without flinching, you lead and they follow, walking on water in the safety of each other. Thank you. And I'm happy to have a conversation or take questions if anyone has them. Oh, you like that one? Thank you. My son likes that one too. Which I'm shocked he read a poem, so. Thank you. I came late to poetry. My first poetry was Tim Gautreaux, who's a name, that's a fiction writer from around here. And I'll say it, and I know I'm being recorded, and he's heard me say this about him, but he's a very grumpy person. And I was scared to death of him. So I was taking poetry, which I loved, because in his class, one of the assignments was we had to go find a poet in a literary journal in the library and then bring a poem that we liked to class. And I knew I loved poetry in college, but I didn't think of it as something that people did who were alive, you know? Um, so in the library, I found this poem by, it was Yusef Komunyaka, who is another Louisiana poet. He grew up around Bogalusa. And it was his poem Facing It, which is about, it's about looking at the Vietnam Veterans War Memorial. I don't know if you all have seen that. It's like polished. Yeah, it's a phenomenal poem. The monument itself is like an edge rising up out of the earth of polished black granite. And the thing that sold me into poetry for my whole life was the image that he closes the poem with, which is about he sees a woman behind him and it looks like she's trying to erase names, is how he describes it. And then he corrects himself because he realizes what he's seeing. He says, no, she's brushing a boy's hair. And I was like, what? So it was a poem that blew my mind. I found it on my own. I understood it, and that was it. So I started to poetry when I was in college, and then I found out there were these places called MFA programs where you could study poetry even more. And I had read another poet that I liked named Jim Whitehead, who wrote these poems about ordinary people, but they were really kind of profound. And I always liked that too because I felt, I think maybe, or I shouldn't speak for anyone. I myself thought that poetry had to be about fancy, elevated subjects. I didn't realize that I could write about my uncle's shrimping boat or something like that. And reading the work of Jim Whitehead is what made me realize that first. And I read that he taught at the University of Arkansas, and I said, oh, I'm going to go there and study with Mr. Jim Whitehead, in which I did. I had no idea it was hard to get into, or I didn't know there was this whole thing, but I just it said like, send some poems, do this, do that. And so I sent that off in the mail, and I got into that MFA program, which was great. So I lived in Fayetteville for 3 years, and I was a student of Jim Whitehead's. He was a great, great writer, brilliant thinker, a poet, football player, philosopher, giant, huge, wonder beast of a man. So I went to the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville for an MFA. That was a long time ago. Thank you. I think I'm still learning. I feel like I'm still studying for my comps exam. That's it? That was so easy. Did you have one?
Off the wall question. You're a cyclist? Bicyclist?
I used, when I said, are you saying because I rode my bike to Abita? Okay, let me describe my bicycle for you, and that will answer your question.
Experience on a bicycle? What's going through your mind?
What can I put in my basket on this bike ride? My bike is one speed. It has fat tires. I can pedal barefoot if I flip the tires upside down. So, I put beverages in it. It's a chillax bike, and it's purple also. So I'm not one of those people that's flying by. I am chilling and enjoying myself and taking pictures of flowers and things on my bike.
One last question. What do you think about those guys flying by?
If they say on your left, I say thank you and I move even further over to the right. But if they whiz by and they don't say anything, I think that I don't like them. And if I'm really feeling spicy, I'll say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. But if you just say that you're passing, just like in a car, I'll get out of the way. Because, we have different goals. Mine is just chilling and, just enjoying myself. Did you have one, or you were just, no? Okay. Anybody else? Are you a cycler? Yes. Okay. Well, you look like the kind of person that says they're passing. And if not, okay. And then if not, you can leave here a changed man. That really? Oh, well. I didn't say it. Anyone else? Well, thank you. I do have books here for sale, courtesy of Books Along the Teche, which I'd be happy to sign for you. Or we can just chill and mingle if you don't want to answer a question to the microphone. 4? hmm 4. I have 2 here today. So, all right. My last 2 books were with LSU Press, and before that, I was with the University of Akron Press in Ohio. I don't know. That's a whole. Well, you can talk about all that tomorrow in your talk, because um, well, that'll be what you and Daryl Bork cover tomorrow, getting published. Because I mean, I have no idea what's going on. I hope is this. Are we still on video? I should still be pretending like I know everything. But the honest truth is, I mean, I do feel that published authors have as much uncertainty as people who are just trying to get published. I mean, it's not like you ring some bell and you're in a secret club. We're all in the same club. It's just, so I totally recognize that uncertainty. Yes? Um, I try not to have a ritual because I don't want to make it like I've got to do this, I've got to do this. Like in my perfect world, I would just be able to write when I had an idea. But I'll tell you some things that I always do, and I even have visual proof. I have a notebook-sized purse, and the reason for my notebook-sized I took the notebook out to come over here, of course. But because I put it in this thing. But I always have a notebook with me, so if I can write something down, or if I read something I like, I can just write it down. But in my perfect world, I can spend a few hours in the morning just working and getting stuff down. That would be at the beginning of the process, like before I really have something I'm working on. If I have a poem that I'm working on or a draft that I'm trying to finish and perfect, then I get obsessed with it and I print it out. I carry it around. It's folded up in my pocket and I'm writing on it. It's in the front seat of the car. I get obsessed with it. But in my perfect world, I write every day. As perfect as Poet Laureate is, it's made me really busy, and so I don't have that. I mean, as a poet, I am very used to being completely anonymous. Like no one knows or cares who I am or what I do or do not write. And so then getting publicity is so strange because I'm used to just being invisible. But in my perfect world, I'm at that desk for 2 hours. I like to start with a pencil, and I have those art erasers that make it really easy to erase. So I use a soft lead. But I mean, if I have to, I can write with any old scratchy pen that I find. But I like to start with a pencil. And, the writer Jamie Attenberg, who lives in New Orleans, does these really cool things called 1,000 Words of Summer. And it's like a 2-week, I don't want to say it's a club because it's not exclusive. It's just a bunch of people that decide that every day, on these particular days, we're going to get up and write 1,000 words every day. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a kind of a fun thing to do. It turns into kind of a fun community. In Poetry Month, a lot of poets write a poem a day, and I'm like, who are you people? I can't do that at all. But some people like to write a poem a day in the month of April. I'll take a poem on any day at any frequency that it occurs to me, but I'm not a daily poem person. I guess I'm a bit slower of a writer. 6 years between books, and that's pushing it. So I did tell myself for this next one, I'm going to wait until it's really, 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 really good and then worry about publishing it. I don't know if I answered your question at all. Okay. Yes? I had always written stuff. Even when I was a little kid, I used to beg my mom to buy me notebooks. and I would fill them up. I wasn't writing poems, I was writing short stories, and they were all about mice. And they all began on page 1, and they ended on the last page of the notebook, no matter what. They could be hanging from a cliff, and it was because I was out of pages. What? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think they had that. I don't know. I don't know. But I started writing poetry in high school, and the combination of having that first teacher, finding some contemporary poets, and then specifically a contemporary poet who was writing about, not upper crust society people that were, thinking about ancient art or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with those poems. I mean, I love Ode on a Grecian Urn, but we can also have Ode on a Crawfish Boil too, right? And once I realized that, I felt that I had a way into poetry. And I've always felt fiercely loyal to this state, even with all of its flaws, I feel like I can say the flaws because I live here and I'm in them, but I get very upset when other people are like outsiders are pointing stuff out. And that's an area I like to explore in poems too, because we can have, I don't know, just like the book of Psalms, I can have elation, I can have anger, I can have sadness, I can have all those things in one spot. And I started when I was in college. So, anybody else? That's about one question from everyone. Thank you all very much for your time. Enjoy your weekend at this great event.